Great. Now, there's Katie. Hi, Katie. So, as you can see, I'm in sunny Southern California. Even though it did rain, it's rained. It's rained, and that is quite an exception. Obviously, it rains more in the winter, or it rains in the winter, but still, the rain here is like you really need it. We really, really, really need it down here. It's bone dry. So, yeah. Um, I don't know if Amy, I just want you to, Amy is on silent witness because of her whole family and everybody being ill. But I'm going to, hopefully you can hear me. And I just wanted you to check in the forum just to make sure um, no one's having any troubles, any woes. So, what, Amy? Yeah, just check. Thank you, love. Yeah, so I am down in a different environment, different backdrop, different everything, and that sun is shining, and I'm going to go right out that door when we do our ritual and do it in the wet sand, because literally the earth here is sand. No, okay, because I thought I thought I saw Rue. Okay. Oh, okay. Okay, great. Now I see her. She just got on. Okay, thank you. Um, Yes, so being down south and in the light when it's the dark moon is always tricky for me. And I do it for Amy. I really do. I do it for anyone who's over there. Otherwise, I would always do the rituals at night. So just so you know why, wonder why I do the rituals during the day. That is why. So that we can accommodate everybody. And the amazing thing that it's taught me is that it really doesn't matter. The psyche is the psyche, and the dark psyche is the dark psyche, and it's dark whether it's light or dark outside. So, and that's what we're deep diving into today. Um, I'm just waiting to see what I wanted to. Amy and I were communicating last night, and one of the things that came up, which I was not conscious of, I know at one point I was, but I forgot about it, is Chiron is conjunct our sun and moon. Amy, is it actually at 19 degrees? Because that's the degree of the solar eclipse and dark moon. Where is it? 20? Yeah, so essentially, depending on the size of the planet. Anyway, this is where you can get into the real literal exact science and art of astrology, and they'll say, with certain things like asteroids, the orbs or the distance from um, two planets is going to be determined. A conjunction is a smaller degree, a lesser degree, whereas for instance something like Pluto, the orb can be much larger, um, and that's because it takes, yeah, it's just a huge wide orbit. So but I just really take it as, I mean, obviously, if it's 20 degrees and it's 1 degree, it's just just absolutely merged with it. And if it's not that close, I still take it. I almost take it from sign to sign, like water to water, or would be a trine, or fire to fire. So I'm not like specifically exact. I do find, of course, that the exact is very powerful in terms of ritual um, and a lot of times what's happening in our initiation, um, what I've experienced is that a lot of times, we kind of cringe as we're watching it get to that exact point, and a lot of times that's when the baby is birthed. The pearl comes out, um, and then the nature of some of these larger ones, we get a pearl and then it disappears. We get a pearl, it disappears. And this is particular with Neptune. And the more you need clarity of thought and clarity of being and strong grip on ego and conscious mind. And Jung, just so you know, referred to the ego, and Marion Woodman and the depth psychologists as really a much larger sphere than what we talk about it. So it's not necessarily at all negative, but just understanding what the ego is in the conscious mind. So that has, as we've been writing to and talking about, it has a necessity to have identity. We have a necessity to have an identity, and we start losing that grip. It's very uncomfortable. Yet this is what Neptune's initiation is all about. The discomfort of dissolving, of losing for a time the sight of yourself, of ourselves, and sometimes our lives, the lives that we've known them to be. So it's for some of my friends, it's probably one of the most difficult of the initiations and archetypes. For me, I have always been pretty right brain, pretty extremely right brain, and very emotional, and not always had a really strong grip on an identity. It just kept getting changed up and moving from one thing to another. And as a child was very, very difficult. So I don't have as much difficulty with it. I also find, just for us women, that perimenopause and menopause is probably the next very challenging cycle in terms of us as women, of experiencing that dissolving of the old self. I mean, we always get that a little bit with the. I'm just gonna mute. We get that with our blood cycles, and we always get that with our blood cycles around the blood, pre and during our blood. It's just we can be what feels like a mess emotionally. It's definitely hormonally. We're probably, I mean, the whole cycle with our blood is very much related to the ocean and the sea. It is the ocean and the sea. Darwin spoke of women's wombs and the blood cycles as being basically miniature primordial seas that were lodged in us when we crawled out of the ocean, which is really an amazing and very interesting phenomenon. And then to recognize again, because our identity sees ourselves as ourselves, but we are just as much a force of nature that is outside the control of our identity or ego. We can't stop our blood. We can't stop the way the birth happens. I mean, those are really strong ways to relate to it. And men have a little bit more of a challenge of understanding this piece because of the fact that they don't have something so prominent in their bodies that takes them down every month. So they're, I've noticed in the men that I have been in relationship with all my life, I mean, very strong identities that just kind of connect and see their vision and their goals and pursue them. Not that it's not challenging, it definitely is. But with women, we just get wiped out. There's just this wiping out that seems to regularly happen, and this loss of knowing who we are, feeling extremely emotional, and then when the cycle comes back up, that strong sense of identity starts to come forward, and we have that clarity that comes out again. Very strong at ovulation, but also just in the whole waxing cycle, the waxing cycle of our blood, which is absolutely matched with the waxing cycle with the moon, even if our cycles are not connected, which happens. We go out of sync from time to time, but it's the same type of thing, waxing consciousness, waxing light. And then we go through the waning and we start to dissolve. It starts to get messy. So I think it's very strong for women when they're teenagers and we're just encountering our blood. It's also, again, throughout our life and during the blood cycle. And then during pregnancy, after giving birth, there's a huge cycle of madness there. And then the perimenopause starts to happen. Perimenopause, and it's so elusive that it's only now that endocrinologists and others are really noting that there's a change going on that's affecting us mentally, emotionally, and psychologically. So up until this time, we've just been mad women, just mad, simply mad. And then during, also the menopause and all these changes happening and heat emotionally, physically, and all these levels, but also a breaking down of what has been and an intolerance actually for what has been. And that's pretty much universal with women. Um, through those cycles, but we're isolated, so we don't even realize that. We're wondering, why we're mad. And so Pisces really rules this part. All the water signs do. Lots to do with the hormones, the primordial, and just that dissolving place. Of course, that leads to and can very seriously lead to insanity and mental illness. Um, which is why we have to have each other's back and watch, because it's not that we all don't have madness, but it's just being aware that there's cycles of it, and then there's cycles where it's going too long, potentially. Just that we need support, and that's the key. It's just like Inanna, turning to Ninshupar, and she says, "Okay, I'm going down to Ereshkigal," and which is, as I think you're all noting, is very similar to the whole Sedna myth, except it's water, but it's very similar, Sedna, except it's the shaman instead of Inanna going down to Sedna. But anyway, going down to the underworld, and Ninshubhar, Inanna turns to Ninshubhar and she says, "If I'm not back in 3 days and 3 nights, go get help." So that's really an important part of the ego, that knows that we're going into a descent and knows to be aware of the landscape we are in. And then as we deep dive, just to have those support people and the work itself, like the work that we're doing here, to support what we're going into, to support that. Otherwise, we're fully identified with it. And this is what happened to Sylvia Plath. She was aware of her own propensity towards her madness. But what happened in that last cycle, according to pieces that she wrote and others wrote, is that she was recognizing that she was moving into the landscape of madness. And she did reach out. She tried to get into some mental institutes in England, and they were all full. Like, she couldn't get into any. So she recognized the landscape she was in, and in her case, it was quite serious mental illness. So she recognized it, and then she dipped in, and then she was gone. She was now fully identified with her madness and insanity. The amazing piece about that story, or the tragic, or the amazing, both, what's amazing and tragic, awe, I don't know, awesome in the true sense of that, is that it's when some of her most incredible work was written. Just and when you read it, it's just, or when I read it, and so many people who have this encounter with it, it's just so powerfully speaks to one's own. I mean, she has an intensity of emotion in her poetry that really mirrors the suffering, the suffering with her father and those relationships with the patriarchy, and a lot, and the suffering with her husband, but just in a level of emotion and intensity that really was relevant and continues to be for women. And probably not just for women, for, definitely for men as well, for anyone who appreciates that type of work. So So that's the beauty is when we deep dive into Pisces waters is that we have access to that wonder and beauty and awesomeness. So the other part of it that we need to continue to tutor ourselves in is the Tao and the ways. And if we are having trouble, reach out. So um, one of the things that that I was going into is this Chiron piece that is also conjunct. So as you know, Chiron's the wounded healer. So Amy and I were kind of going back and forth. Well, it's not the exact same. It's definitely not the exact same as Sedna because his wound was, different. He got it differently. He received it differently. But the other thing, as I was falling asleep, Amy, is that the one thing that I loved about the Sedna myth is that she was a human woman. And some of the other myths that we were looking at as being the focus for Pisces, just didn't quite feel right because they or didn't match for me my suffering, the suffering and the challenges that I face in a way that felt like it could really meet me. It's kind of like when people go, "Oh yeah, no, I know how you feel," and you go, "Actually, you don't." And and when you connect with people who really know how you feel, and you know that um, they know that you really are. So, or you know that they do because they have that story, or it doesn't have to be the exact story, but they have and do suffer. So, yeah, like Prometheus, awful, his liver being eaten out every day. But man, he had the power of foresight, so he knew that was going to come to an end. And then Chiron, um, he was half God, so yes, horrible suffering. His friends were there. Came in a lot. He was also a healer when they would come to him in the caves. So there was a different quality. Sedna is just the suffering one in the deep dark waters that has essentially no friends. Essentially she has been completely cut off from those she loves and her tribe, except when the shamans come come to her. And yes, now her tribe that has become these incredible sea creatures. So that really felt really relevant because there's something about suffering that I'm experiencing that it isn't solvable. So and even when I say that, I can just feel that in my heart. It's just not. There are many times we do solve and evolve and move through, but that's that. Then you just sit with um, the suffering of humanity. I mean, you just have to. If you can't find it in yourself, you see it in different places, and there is suffering that it doesn't get solved. It's not solvable. And so it's kind of like, what then? That's the place of in some of my experience with suffering is just to go and be with and rock, again, that rocking, just be with. Maybe it transforms, maybe it doesn't, but just um going to, like, so the images just popped in my mind. If we go in and we be with someone in their dying process, or someone who is very ill, I mean, all we want to fucking do is change it. All we want to do is help. But it's this thing, and I think this is the alchemy of both Sedna and Ereshkigal's story. Ereshkigal didn't come back. She didn't come up. It was Inanna. So it was the Enki's creatures who went down, and they moaned with Ereshkigal. They groaned, they rocked, they wept with her. And that's what released Inanna. So again, I say that with great care because it's like, oh well, our intention, just like the shamans would go down to Sedna, and it was to release the gifts, so that people would eat. But I think our intention needs to be, well, this is what I'm exploring, and I want you. This is all of our own exploration. This is not me telling you, but for me, it's if it's this piece that's killing me, is that thing, like, with the, oh, I'm going to change it or rescue it, but just being with, rocking and being with, rocking and being with. And that's it. And that's good enough. And that's the awesomeness. And that's the power and the potency. And that changes me and does a lot, growing my heart. I can just feel the ache, without even thinking, about, the specific suffering. So I think that's the maturation I'm coming to with this piece, and that's what I would like us to do, rather than so we can go into the ritual. One thing that I want to name is that it's just a little bit different what we're going to do, and I think all of us except for Rue has done these rituals before. So this is what we're going to do, is that what I did in the playlist was I created one list, one whole piece, which is going to start with Amy's myth, reading of the myth that she wrote on Sedna. And during that piece, I just want to invite you to do what feels true. It may feel like all you want to do is just sit, as a child or a woman being told a medicine story and not move. And that may be what you feel called to. You may feel called at that point to actually start moving. I recommend that you really start to move into the witness, the self-witness, and start to track with your sensations in your body. So listening to the tail, and at what points you start to feel or hear, yeah, feel sensations in your body. And you don't have to make meaning out of it. Just be with it. Just be with. Just be with. And if there's emotions that arise, just allow them to move. Allow them to be, express. And maybe there is an image that floats up, and so you could have your journal or something near you that you could just jot a word or two down, or anything. Again, you don't want to go into too much writing, but just if something, a memory, because this is deep work, and so some deep memories may be dislodged from the deep for you. So just note it. And also there may be aspects of it, like where the dive comes in, or the birds, or something that you just feel the urge to get into that role, even just for a moment. Like, you can carry the movement in a lot deeper during the authentic movement, but during her telling of the myth, you might just feel that urge. Just allow yourself to do that, So it can be a shamanic journey in and of itself. Or, like I say, you may just choose to be still and close your eyes. Right after the telling of the myth, there's going to be a piece of music that comes in, and I see it really as the shamana getting ready for the descent. And that might be, I mean, during the myth, you might go to your altar and light your candles, or choose to do something there as well. But if you haven't done that, this would be the time with the first piece of music to just go connect with your altar. Just really connect with, the elements. Just drink some water, think water. If you have earth, think earth. If you don't have any earth on there, just your body, earth, air, just the four, really, and fire. Really just connect with the four elements. And then if you have images, photographs, pieces, pick them up. Connect with them as if you never have before. Just their entry points also into the psyche. So just pick things up. And then if there's some words that you want to connect with before you go into the movement, then do a little bit of flow writing. But at that point, again, it's going to be different than what we've been doing on our altars. It's just maybe sketches or things, or again, writing to some kind of a memory that might have come up, but just a sketch of it. And then within the music, it's very inducive to being at the ocean and getting, through the sounds and the senses. So just thinking of yourself, that you're here to make a conscious descent, and that you're putting on whatever to bring to Sedna, to the Sedna in you. Um, and yeah, where's my brush? I purposely left my hair really wet. I thought, entangled. I just thought I would, potentially go down because my hair is off and tangled, and just connect with Sedna viscerally like that with my hair. And um, so just preparing with your tools, and then also being aware that, as we heard in the tale, that there is we're moving through dangerous stratas of the collective unconscious. So thinking primordial creatures or whatever. So what are you going to take with you? A spear? What are you going to take with you? Or are you the spear, or are you, like Rue and I were going back and forth with, the shark? Do you become something like the Harry Potter movie when they dive into the lake, to save their friends that are staked, which is actually a very perfect image for this. In the bottom of the lake, what is the treasure that you're unleashing? So just, allow, again, I'm speaking things, and then just allow what happens happen. And then, and you could even begin the dive during that piece, because the middle piece is really a shamanic piece. It really is, um, that there's sounding in it. I want really to encourage you to make sounds, and be okay with otherworldly sounds. Allow them to come up from your belly, your toes, just different places. And this music will really, help you do that, um, and support you. But it's a shamanic piece of music. So that middle piece is really the time that, if you haven't already, you are in the realm with Sedna, with your, that in that inner space, and it really, and then what happens there is your own, obviously your own communion. But I want you to hold the space intentionally for that. And then the last piece of music is the same as the first one, and because it's the return, because we must return. That is a key in our descents, is that we must return. And even if there's a piece of ourself that is left there, we must return with intact conscious, self and ego, because there is a world that we must move through and be in. So, um, yes. And then I'll come back on at that point, and then just say, okay, now coming out of that, we'll go into our expressive art. So the whole journey between that and the expressive art will be approximately 1 hour. So, but it's Kairos time, it's eternal time, so it's pretty rich, and that's from the myth to the end of our expressive art. What I would like us to do as we begin is something a little bit different than we have done, and because I feel like we're really, on the verge to dive in, and that is just to, instead of self, witness to material that's present right now, is for us to actually set our intention, and to name our intention for the deep dive. Um, and what suffering we are choosing to be with, and not to worry, that may change when we go down, when we enter into that realm. But it's just, um, what is my intention, and what is my intention to go and be with, and then that way, just keeping less of the story out of it until we do the self-witnessing at the end, which is also going to be held a little bit differently, showing our expressive art. Really like us to witness to some of the movements that we experienced in our deep dive. So, we can just show each other something that we bring back in terms of that. These gestures that we get in our authentic movement are actually mudras that we could use throughout the month, um, throughout the year, because they are being offered up from the unconscious. So really want to witness. That's the one piece I feel missing from our work, is being able to witness each other, in our deep dive, and then some words from our writing. And then at the very, very, very end, if anyone wants to stay, I can do a little more one-on-one witnessing. But in this way, we hold it and give each one the opportunity to be seen and heard if you choose to be, because there are some who are at this point choosing to be silent. So I'm just going to check in before I speak my intention and just see if anyone has any questions or Barbara? Yeah, I was just saying, I was just unmuting everyone to see if it, so I unmuted everyone, but I muted myself. So part of it, I just wanted to find out if anyone has any questions or need to speak something. Yes, didn't I unmute you, Barbara? I've unmuted you, so you have to unmute yourself. There we go. So are you looking for the music? It's not a pre-recorded ritual. We are in the ritual, and the recording is exactly as it has been in the past, except this one is including the recorded myth as part of the ritual. So essentially, it's exactly the same, but what we've added to the recording at the beginning is the myth. Is the myth read by Amy, which is pretty. So that's what it is, and so then we'll, yeah. So then I'll just guide you through as. So we are in the ritual. Absolutely, that's what we're in. Yeah. No. Yeah. No. It's. Yeah. No. I understand. It's totally fine. Absolutely. Thank you. Okay. Okay. So So I'm just seeing this big sea cauldron and this whirling and swirling around, and um, so my intention for this deep dive is absolutely to go and to be with my suffering in a different way, to be with it rather than to be it. Um, and that seems to be a really important distinction that's coming to me now after all of this work that we've been entering into Pisces. So my intention is to go and, yes, to be with this suffering one within myself, Sedna, Mother Mary. I mean, just all of these different places that I've been relating to, and the suffering ones in my family, and in yeah, that to which I'm relating to, and to sit and be with my suffering. Mm. Amy, do you want to name yours? Mm, mm. Katie? Trust. Sandy. Mm, mm. Barbara. Thank you. Thank you for that word. So I'm gonna just check in with Rue. You could just write in the chat, you're fine not to speak and just stay as a silent witness or, silent in your process. Um, and you might already be in your, so if you might not, anyway, I'll just let that be because we touched on that before. Um, okay, so do take a moment before you go in. I'm realizing now. Just take a moment before you go in. Dive in, and while you're at your altar, just to do some flow writing. Actually, um, just feeling in the presence of our personal material, which I'm very close to for because so many have written it, written to it. So, but just now that we've named it, I can just feel for myself that it's moving and welling up. So just really, I think that also the piece with what's occurring is that we're making this really vitally conscious as a practice is what um, I'm receiving both from this myth and my own process. So with that, writing what is here in the room and in our hearts, personally. So not just the big transpersonal pieces, but also the personal. So with that, I'm going to release us, and we shall enter in, and we'll see you on the other side. I'm going to invite you to keep your cameras up if you feel like it, if it's true for you. If it's not, you don't have to. If we were together in a room, we would be together in a room experiencing it, which is how I've done this work with all the people I've learned and trained with. So highly recommend it. And if you're not comfortable with that, you don't have to. I'm stopping the recording at this point, so so this part won't be recorded. And we're all going to be in our process, but there's something very vital to the psyche knowing that it's connected with others.